Welcome to the first episode of a new Harmonic series where we have conversations with artists and curators. One of the quickest ways to get to know someone is to understand the music that they're passionate about. And that's kind of what we're trying to do with Harmonic, is to discover new music from the people most passionate about it. So in this episode, Harmonic co-founder George Howard talks with Chris Cline. Chris has worn a ton of hats in the music industry. He's run his own label, he's a recording and mastering engineer, he's worked with artists like Society of Rockets, he is a DJ, he manages the estate of Daniel Kobiaka. It's been his career for a long time and he's still deeply passionate about music as a fan. George and Chris talk about their shared love of post-rock and how they discover artists in a niche genre that doesn't get a lot of mainstream attention. In the description of this video, I've included a link to a blog post where we've put a bunch of post-rock recommendations from George and Chris, so check that out if you want to start your post-rock journey. Now, on to the conversation.
Chris, if you could introduce yourself. George, if you could introduce yourself and just give a little bit of background.
Sure. Chris, go ahead, please.
Okay. Hi, I'm Chris Cline, and I am a recording engineer and just a music nerd, I guess is probably the best way to put it, record collector. And I have been working in the industry for just north of 25 years. And I currently also manage the musical estate of the classical and new age violinist Daniel Kobiaka, and just try to stay as busy and as diverse as I possibly can in this industry that never really has a new paradigm. It's always changing.
So great to be talking to you. I'm George Howard, and been working in the industry for a similarly long period of time. And along with Dan, I'm a co-founder of Harmonic, and um, for me, the whole gesture is to do what we're doing here. Like, you in the brief conversation we had a week or so ago, it was like, a fellow traveler. And you know I think that it's the role of music in all of our lives is different for other people. For me, it's always been a way, as someone that's shy, to find things to kind of talk about and bond over. And it's like the great joy of my life, is sharing that moment of discovery of something that means something to me, and then finding others who do. Because I don't know, taste is taste, and at my age, people like music, dig it, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not in the slightest bit um um judgmental or whatever about what people might like or not like. I just like it when people pay attention, to any type of music, and it moves them. That said, the music that has most moved me in the decades that I've been alive, the half century plus I've been alive, for whatever reason, has not necessarily been in the mainstream. Sometimes it kind of becomes the mainstream, oddly, and so, the gesture of Harmonic, in many ways, is to try to help those people that dig that type of connection find each other. And I think it's really lacking in society, because I don't know about you, Chris, but like, I used to find those people at record stores,
Oh, yeah.
and it shows, full stop, nowhere else. And the online thing, which in theory should make it a lot easier for us to find each other, I think it did for a little while.
Mhm.
I did in the early days of Twitter or whatever. I'd be like, oh, right on. Not so much anymore. So
Yeah.
I'm thrilled to talk to you, and I like, it's, music's a shortcut to other types of people's personalities. So when you talk about people like King Tubby, like, this like, there's not a lot of artists that I love more than King Tubby, but there are very few humans I know who even know who that is. So I'm curious, like, about, like, how did you, I don't know, do you see the point in terms of Harmonic through that lens? Does it make sense? And then, how did you kind of find your way to your points of view? And, like, how do you maintain sanity in this craziness where, if you're anything like me, my neighbors don't listen to the same music that I do.
Right.
So how do you, you know what I'm saying? Like, is there comfort in that? Have you created a world in which that's around you, where you kind of feel comfortable?
Absolutely, and I think that, to your point, record stores are definitely a key component of that, and, my earliest memories are going to the record store with my mom because I needed to get, Saturday Night by the Bay City Rollers. That was my first 45 when I was 4 years old, or the Star Wars soundtrack, and then as I, grew up or some people will probably say I never grew up, but, in high school and started meeting people with the same interests and tastes in music and, kind of I don't wanna say that we were on the fringe, but growing up in Texas, everybody was kind of into the hair metal and all that, and I'm not slamming that, but, me and my friends were listening to the Stone Roses and the Smiths and, a lot of electronic music, the, second wave of industrial music, and that just wasn't, in most people's musical vernacular where everybody knows who New Order, Joy Division, and Depeche Mode are today, but back then it was still not really a thing. So yeah, going to record stores and meeting like-minded people or even seeing somebody on the street, with a t-shirt, you're like, "Hey, that's a cool shirt. I know that band," which that's how me and my best friend met. Um, that's definitely a big part of my life, and it still is today. I still go to record stores and, talk to the clerks and the owners and trying to set up promos with different stores for different records that I'm working on. It grew into something much more than just, finding a common bond with music lovers. So yeah.
And that sense of community, right? And
Yeah.
like, and then I think it's, what's what we're really trying to do. The gesture is, like, everyone should kind of have their own record store, and that's partly because it allows you, just like your friend's T-shirt, to sort of say, well, this is who I am and this is what I care about. And I bet there's some others out there that do too, but you don't know it unless you're wearing that T-shirt, right?
Right.
And then the second order effect of that is, you and I both have managed, even with our, I guess, sort of outsider taste or whatever, to have made a career in the music business. Not necessarily in the way that people might, associate it with, but like, we're doing, to a greater or lesser degree, what we love. I speak for myself, and and it's sort of amazing. I've worked over the years with major labels. I've done the thing, but you know, I've done it kind of in the terms that I want, and it's still really possible. And maybe talk a little bit about how you've managed to do that.
Gosh, that's a great question, and I don't even know where to begin with that. Um,
Well, maybe
you,
talk about how you're doing it now.
you
You know what
know,
I mean? Like, yeah.
I have somehow found myself in this position where I tend to work more or less with people that I want to work with, and I'm not. That's not coming from a place of ego. I think it's coming more from a place of sacrifice in that I wanted to work on a very specific type of music and not just with every single person, or every single musician in the world as a recording engineer. Um, so I think that started at the very beginning. To your point, you said you've had the chance to work with major labels, and my first experience with a major label actually was not one that was very pleasant, and I always wanted to work with independent music because that's what I kind of always gravitated towards. That I've just kind of stayed in that lane. When I moved out to San Francisco, that turned into me starting a record label or joining a record label with somebody that became a very, very dear friend of mine. We're still incredibly close, and we wanted to release music that we thought that would have an impact in different genres, and that would also help the musicians themselves and trying to get their name out there and create some discovery for people that were looking for something that was in post rock or straight up college indie rocks, singer songwriter type stuff that was a little more fringy. um and so I just have continued down that path, and eventually it ended up with me working with this gentleman named Daniel Kobialka, who was
Mm.
a classical violinist. He played with the San Francisco Symphony for 33 years, and now I manage his catalog, and I'm trying to keep his legacy alive, and in doing that, I tried to, you know, maybe bring his music more into more contemporary terms, genres by, doing a dub remix of one of his songs that's currently on
which
the
is on
Harmonic platform.
Harmonic. Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Thank you.
tell us a little bit about managing his legacy, because it's something George and I both have a bit of experience in working with estates of artists, and it's tough. Just talking from personal experience, trying to manage an estate when music discovery right now happens on platforms where the artists are expected to show their face and kind of
Mm.
be, be representing themselves a lot more so than having, I don't know, a radio station or a blogger representing them, right? And so it's very difficult doing that with someone that's no longer with us. And so how do you think about, one, I'd love to hear more about his legacy and kind of understand what that is, but then how do you think about um modernizing that and kind of sustaining it? Because that's really what it is, right? It's sustaining their legacy and making sure that the work that they've done is still recognized for the importance that it has.
Right, right, and I'm learning more and more every day, so, of course, a big part of this is managing the IP and making sure that everything's accounted for, with his PRO, with BMI, and making sure that everything is, accounted for properly with, Harry Fox and with all the different organizations that exist today. It's as y'all are well aware, it's such a juggling process to keep tabs on all that, and especially when you start dealing with, performing rights organizations outside of the United States, and how you can how to deal with that, and which organizations might have overlap, or because I joined this organization, well, now it cancels out this organization, and it gets really, really crazy, and that for me honestly has been a lot of just been nose to the grindstone, trying to figure it out on my own. I've got my MBA, and it's its emphasis isn't it was in the music business, but there wasn't a lot of publishing and rights administration and all that involved at that. So I've been teaching myself as I go. So getting back to your question, it's making sure that, Daniel's work, A, is protected, B, that I'm able to utilize some of the marketing opportunities that exist out there today that aren't going to, cost a gazillion dollars, and making sure that, I just present him in, um, just in the way that he should be presented, because he was such an innovator, not just as a classical performer, but and a lot of people frown upon this term, he was a big, component of the new age music movement in the '70s and '80s. With He started his
Which is
own
a
la
sort of different, sorry to interrupt, but sort of a different thing than I think what most people think of. I mean, like, I think of Mark Isham's early records, some of the early George Winston records. Those are great records.
Absolutely, totally, and, Kobialka was experimenting with that, and he, did some work with Stephen Halpern, who also was, a pretty big luminary, and still is today, but he, created his own label, and he started taking, uh, you know, classical works from the classical repertoire and turning them more into, into the new age paradigm or genre. And I think a lot of people frown upon that, but there's such a giant audience out there, and I'm sorry, a lot of the music is really, really great, and the arrangements are really, really beautiful. Don't know why I said I'm sorry. A lot of people
Yeah, you don't
just
have to apologize
yeah, I
for that,
know, I
man.
Well,
know. But, if you
But
go online, you do searches for new age music, you have a lot
uh,
of people that, oh, they just slam it. I'm like, you've got people like Laraji, and you talk about Brian Eno, and that can
I was
spill
just gonna
over
say that
into
you are
post-rock.
just one hair's breadth away from ambient, Yeah.
Exactly, they all share a common thread, and you can't just say, "Well, all new age music is crap," which a lot of people, they totally dismiss it. And
And I th
those same people might come back and say, "But I love Brian Eno." Well, come on. You
and I
can't.
think it's sorry, finish your thought, I
No, no, no.
apologize.
No, I'm good.
So, I mean, to answer your question, and I think it's like when you said, Chris, about like your earlier days and the Smiths or whatever, right? Like, it was that was a gateway drug for me too. Like,
Yeah.
um, I discovered, quote unquote, all of those records that transformed my life. You know, the early REM records, the Jason Mary Chain records,
Yeah.
the Smiths records, all of those things, television. It was not the radio, because that stuff didn't get played on the radio. I mean, there's college radio, but that was sort of, I was removed from that until I went to Boston. And, you know, there were kind of fanzines for like the hardcore world, which I was part of, but it was all through word of mouth. And
Yeah.
whether that word of mouth was, you know, I didn't have older siblings, but so that you know, the record store guys sort of became proxy older siblings or whatever. And that's that's how we all discover the music that we love, even
Yeah.
today. And yet it's sort of lost. And so, Dan, you talk about like catalogs, or like how do you gain awareness? It's the people who love them talking about them and
Yeah.
telling others about them. And the whole music industry is sort of structured to keep that from happening, right? Like, in the sense of artists never know. Like, is the amount of people that Michael Stipe and Peter Buck and Johnny Marr and Morrissey should be thanking me for introducing their music to is
Yeah.
a long ass list. And I did it with delight. It wasn't a job. It
Yeah.
was just the greatest thing in the world, because I'd find those fellow travelers, and then we could nerd out about Russian ruffians or whatever, right?
Sure.
And that thrill of discovery, but also that thrill of then communicating your joy about something that others haven't yet discovered, not because you're cool, but because then when you do, you get to talk to other people who have those same sensibilities,
Yeah.
is the greatest thing in the world. That's what we're trying to do with Harmonic. And by the way, the artists, the bands should know that. They should know that you are a passionate fan of their work, not so they can pay you, but so they can give you more stuff. That's what drives the thing.
Right.
It's what drives everything. You look at Billie Eilish; she's the biggest artist in the world right now. But look what's happening to Geese.
Yeah.
It's always the same pattern. I don't know if Geese will become as big as Billie Eilish. They probably should. But if someone had heard the first Billie Eilish records, most people would be like, "Oh, that'll never be the biggest thing in the," and it was that small handful of people. And there's no structure for that. And that's really what we're trying to do with Harmonic, is to structure that relationship where I'm a massive fan of this thing. I want to tell somebody about it, and because I want to support the band, but also so that I can kind of join the community and structure it so that the fan feels that he, she, or they is part of that process. And by the way, the bands and the artists own the relationship between the fans on Harmonic. I
Right.
can't think of any other platform that does that, and that's a big problem. This is an ad for Harmonic, but that's a big problem with places like Spotify, where it's like, you know, you don't know. You have some vague geographic idea
Yeah.
of who's loving your music, but you can't talk to them, you can't reach them, you can't thank them, and that's crazy. And you and I are old enough to remember like MySpace and all the time and energy that people put into their band page on that, and then it goes down and they take all it like that shouldn't happen.
Right. Yeah, that's a great point about the lack of insight and metrics on Spotify. It's all very, it's just a macro, the view, and you
Yeah.
can't get granular. And it's, they want you to pay for X, Y, and Z for discovery and other, types of, marketing opportunities they have on Spotify. But it's, yeah, I mean, what's the point when you can't dig into, what's really happening?
Well, it's kind
And
of worse, right? They sorry to interrupt. They charge you. They say, "Hey, give us $15 or whatever it is now a month," and you know that number is going to go up, and the royalties to the artist is not going to go up. So you
no,
explain that to me. But they charge you to make playlists, right? Which is a weird thing. Let me pay you, Spotify, and then do your work that you can train your algorithm on, instead of you paying me to do it. And it's why, again, ad for Harmonic. It's like, look, if you recommend an artist and you write about him, her, or they, then you are part of the ecosystem and you deserve something for generating those sales. We're not going to charge you to create playlists for us. We're going to pay
right.
you to do that,
Yeah. Yeah.
It's totally backwards.
I agree.
Totally backwards.
I agree. 100%.
You know, if
100%.
you're the record store guy, you talk about something you love, you do that, but when you sell that record, that's how you pay your bills, you know? And
Yeah.
music journalists, like, such an important part of the ecosystem. The record label that I ran, Rykodisc, we wouldn't have lived, but not for music journalists who would write about this stuff. And man, and now no one's paying. I mean,
Yeah.
Washington Post, like, they're just
Uh,
decimating these things, and it's like it's the economic thing, but it's also, wait, so literally no one has a voice. There's no place for someone to say, I love this music and you should check it out. That's a dead society,
yeah.
right? That's just a society of bankers.
Yeah. Yes. And Harmonic does offer that unique opportunity for, us, the creators and the holders of the rights holders of the IP, to disseminate, our content in the way that we want to. And whether that be client facing or just with the mechanisms on Harmonic itself and how we can present what we have, which is incredibly unique. And, Dan had invited the Society of Rockets to do that with the package release, the bundled release, where we were able to include a lot of things that are currently, well, we pulled our catalog off of Spotify, but it was up there. With the Spotify Reels now, people can download all that information, all that content, flyers, everything else, which we're not able to do that anywhere else. And I think that that's a really, really unique experience for us, for the listeners, for the fans, and that they can download the flyers and they're full resolution, and they can go and print them and frame them and do all kinds of things that to my knowledge, you can't do that anywhere else.
And you can't, and be
Well,
part of it. And again, it's going to find, I mean, the niches that emerge, right? Like, you and I nerd out about things like post rock, which, kind of had its I guess its initial moment through labels like Thrill Jockey and the whatever late 90s, I guess, and bands like Tortoise and stuff. I saw Tortoise. We talked about this. I saw Tortoise a few
Mhm.
months ago. It was phenomenal.
Oh yeah.
The audience was not everyone just looked like me, an old middle-aged white man. It's still being discovered. It's still vital. Those guys are still able to kind of go and do their thing. They never had a major label deal. They never had a radio hit or anything close to it.
Yeah.
And we want Harmonic to be that place. And to that end, I want Tortoise and all their various offshoots up there because I think it would make sense for that. And that's what it's for. Like, the world doesn't need new places to find Taylor Swift. I mean, talk about, like, the bands that you love, that you sort of was part of the discovery of, that are still kind of doing the thing. And what's the new stuff that you're listening to that's
Oh
moving
yeah.
you? Not to
Yeah.
put you on the
Yeah.
spot.
I mean, and if we're to focus on post rock, I mean, we can also go back to the Enos and people like
Right.
that. When like here
Talk,
come
talk, right? Oh,
talk, talk, right?
so funny. We had that conversation, and
Yeah,
I have my I love and respect to the moon. I just don't go back to Mark Hollis like as much. There was a huge thing in the New York Times the other day. Did you see
yeah.
that?
No, I haven't
Uh,
seen it.
un it's unbelievable. There's like a big ass piece on Talk Talk and in the
Really.
Times.
So
Yeah, I'll send
did
you the article. It's like we summoned it somehow, you know? But sorry, I interrupted you. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
no, the genius of Mark Hollis, and how many different genres and musicians he actually had this gigantic effect on, like slow dive being one of them. And everybody wants to play slow dive into the shoegaze dream pop category, but when you listen to the album Pygmalion, it's kind of neither of those. It's definitely more post rock, ambient, and we could remove all these genres altogether, these names. It's and not really pigeonhole all these different bands, because a lot of this music blurs so many lines. And when we're talking about Tortoise or Slint or Talk Talk or Trans Am or all these different bands, and then we fast forward to today, where Tortoise is, they're still doing the thing, and the Sea and Cake are still doing the
Yeah.
thing. But then we look at bands like Battles, and
mhm.
it's like, you know, when people ask me, well, how would you classify battles? I'm like, I don't, it's battles music.
It's right,
But
right.
it blurs all these different lines to electronic, to, free jazz, to post rock, and a lot of these bands I think are doing this today where there's more and more influences like, Water from Our Eyes. I don't know if you've,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Of
Jesus,
course.
like
Yeah, yeah,
what are
yeah.
they doing? Like
Right. Yeah.
it's
Cool.
absolutely insane. It's like
Yeah.
music concrete, but with pop sensibilities. And
But and that's the Laura Lee guy, right?
I don't know who is actually in that
This is
group. I just know
okay.
that when I hear them, I'm like, they're all over the place, and it's all
Right.
fantastic.
But like, this is Lorelei, or however you say it. Like I saw him open for MJ Linderman, who's
Wow.
doing a very specific thing, which I love. But
Yeah.
then and it was cool to your point exactly. Like the This Is Lorelei record, and I think he's attached to the Water from Your Eyes. But like it's almost a dance record,
Yeah.
But then MJ Linderman does one of the This Is Lorelei songs as sort of the way MJ Linderman does, like kind of Americana or whatever, and it's just a great song, and you can't
Yeah.
kind of tell, and it doesn't matter which is better. They're both so great, and
Right.
to me, that's like I grew up as a literature major talking about like postmodernism, right?
Mhm.
And so, I love the idea of adjacencies kind of coming together, and to your
Sure.
point, like battles or just post rock generally. Oh, there's a dub line. Oh, there's this thing, the music concrete thing or whatever that comes
Right.
in and out of it. And that just it continues to thrill me in the same way it did when I first heard it. Like, when I first heard that, because I grew up in like the American South, and it was Creedence and I love Creedence,
Yeah. Totally.
but like it was of a very certain thing, and then you hear something that's just like you can't quite understand,
Yeah.
and that makes me at least go, oh, I must hear more of it.
Yeah.
And again, I don't know, like I think Aquarium Drunkard's the greatest thing in the world. Like I want Harmonic to be more of that, just like this all this, and I'm reluctant to use the word weird, though I mean that in the best way,
Right.
because it you can just jump from one thing to the other.
But when you talk about that little thing that catches your ear that's different, right? That's kind of when you go from passive listening to something that is kind of massively available to active intentionally listening and
Mhm.
searching, being like, oh, now there's something weird. I need to find more of that. And that I think requires more effort than a lot of people are used to. And that's something that streaming kind of took away from us,
You're
but is
right.
something that like the post rock genre and any niche, I mean, it requires intentional searching because you can't just maybe you can stumble upon one thing, but you can't get deep into that genre without really looking for it. And I think that's what creates some of those communities where everyone has kind of raised their hand and said, I want to go deeper into this. I want to so like learning a new language, right? It's just
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
okay, now we can all talk about this in a way that most other people don't. It's like when you go to a show and there's only 40 people there and you're like, okay, I don't know any of you, but we all share something very specific in
Yeah.
common. And it's because we all search for it. And so we need the people, but you need others to kind of guide you. I think that's one interesting thing about music. You can't just, you need someone to point the way, even if it's someone pointing at themselves saying, I'm making this thing that's unique. There's, there is connection that leads you to an artist because otherwise it's
Completely
someone
agree.
playing in their bedroom and you'll
But
Yeah.
never
isn't but
discover them.
that's what I hope Harmonic becomes, because
Yes.
it's like the best people to guide you through that are critics slash fans. They really
Yeah.
are, right?
And
Like
the
critics
artists
get sort of,
themselves.
I know that, but the artists in a certain way should say, here's what we do. I wouldn't put myself in the category of any of these people, but I don't really want to explain my music. You know what I mean? Like the music that I make, no one cares, so I don't have to explain it. But and the like if my girlfriend's like, oh, what, I don't know. It's just and but like I like the idea that someone might care enough to go, well, I see what you're doing there, and like and it's the internet. Like we can besmirch technology and the current times that we live in, probably justifiably so on many levels, but the amount of stuff that we can then discover so quickly if we're sort of mindful about it is
Mhm.
insane, right?
Right.
And I think about like Chris, you and me, like you wanted to discover something about REM in 1982. Good luck.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I remember having to like write away to like the Face magazine in England and wait 4 months to get an interview with the or something. You know what I mean? And
Right.
now it's like, oh, I can know, and it's wonderful. You know, I mean, and it's like a mindset. Like, I'm super down the Miles sort of post Bitches Brew catalog right now. You talk about post rock, my man invented it. I mean,
Yeah.
we have touch tunes at the bar that I go down to, which is just like a towny bar here in Marblehead. The other night I was feeling no pain, and I put on Miles Runs the Voodoo Down off of Bitches Brew.
Yeah.
So like for 17 minutes, the patrons of a little bar in Marlboro, and it was, you know, people
Yep.
but like and now I can order books on it, but like I want to be able to talk about it, you know?
Yeah, yeah. No, that's so funny that you bring that up because, back in the days of our old jukeboxes where you had 45s and then, it graduated to CDs.
Yeah,
Me,
yeah,
me and one of my friends would go into this place called the Ginger Man in Austin and drink,
yeah.
just go and have pints of Guinness. And we knew that we could put $1 in and play like all of what would be side A of Headhunters by Herbie Hancock.
Yeah,
$1
Hancock,
would
yeah.
get us like 20 minutes of Herbie Hancock. And we were like, and then we would just play it over and over and over. And we would
That's
see
exactly
people
what I
like,
do.
what's happening? Why are we hearing this, these funk jams over and over? Well, because A, they're badass. And this is
And be there, get your money's worth.
this is how we can stretch out $1 and
Yeah,
not have to
yeah.
listen to like, again, use besmirch. Like, I don't want to hear Creed. I'm sorry. Like, I don't want to hear that.
And
I'm
by the way, I
drinking.
said credence, not
I know you
Creed.
said
Yeah,
Creed.
okay.
Believe me. Oh, no. I'm CCR,
But there's no value for your dollar with credence, because it's like, yeah, greatest songs in the world, they're all like 2 minutes long.
Exactly.
Unless you play Susie Q or
Exactly.
something.
Or going back to post rock, you could play Dejad, the first track on
Yes, for
Million
Tortoise.
Slipping,
Yeah,
which is,
yeah,
what is that,
yeah.
like 22 minutes or whatever?
Oh, I have a whole playlist of this stuff.
Totally.
The Yola Tango record. It's on one of their songs, like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
I'll play Grant Green in there for 17 minutes.
Yes.
Anything by Jimmy Smith.
Yes.
And also because, like, I mean, if I'm really mad, I'll play Murder Most Foul by Bob Dylan, right, and just evacuate the bar because
Right.
there's 17 minutes of Bob talking about the Kennedy assassination at a glacial pace. But like you can put Jimmy Smith on and everyone's yeah, okay.
Right.
But it's and there's no greater joy for me than when someone comes up and they all know it's me. Well, George, okay, I know you played this because no one in the world, what is this? Like, welcome to Tortoise.
Right.
And
Right.
then it kind of works,
Yeah. Yeah. You get lost in it. If you haven't heard it, it has to be intriguing at some level just to hear the textures and the combination of instruments that they're employing, and what is, kind of a pop paradigm in some instances, not every instance. I think Tortoise moved more towards that with TNT and on to standards. But I think that even people that aren't active listeners are probably going to perk up a little bit and go, this sounds like something that I've heard in a spaghetti
Yeah.
Western with
Well, right.
synthesizers and,
Right. The 5-string guitar, bass, or whatever it is, the Fender 5.
Yeah.
I listened yesterday because I read an interview with I can't remember the dude's name who plays that instrument in Tortoise, but he's like, oh, one of the records that I love that influenced me is The Lonely Surfer by and it's a surf record from whatever, and he's playing the Fender 5 thing. I'll find the musician who did it, but doesn't really matter. But it's like they're building off of those building blocks, but just like fucking with it in the coolest way possible. I love that.
I
love
agree.
that.
Yeah, there's so much good stuff out there, and
that's what we want. Like, I want more drone stuff. I want more free jazz. I want the stuff where people, to your point, Dan, exactly, that people go, well, I want to put a little bit of effort into this. I don't.
Where do you guys go right now? Right. I mean, we want Harmonic to organize this at some point, but where do you go right now to find something that's off the beaten path?
Well, I mean, as I said, I will religiously read anything that kind of comes through the aquarium drunkard sort of, viewpoint. But increasingly, I follow the rabbit holes. So we're like, as Chris was saying, Tortoise has all these offshoots, many of which I know, many I don't, but you can kind of just follow them. You will hit a dead end. And by that, I mean, you will finally there'll be something that's like, this is not increasingly not on Spotify, because I think there is a probably sort of overlap between the type of music that is made and the type of person who goes, I don't want to be on Spotify. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know what it is exactly. But then you can kind of sometimes find it on YouTube. Other times you have to mail away for it still, I mean, Chris, I bet you remember Ernie B's, right? The dub guy, the mail order dub, like back in the 80s and 90s, if you wanted to find the Twinkle Brothers or whatever, like
Yeah.
Ernie B's was the man,
Right.
but
Yeah.
to answer your question, Dan, I mean, it's to a certain degree, you can find shit on YouTube or whatever. I just feel kind of shitty about it. I don't feel like I'm not. It's just, I don't know. It feels kind of gross.
It doesn't feel like you're supporting the artist at the end of the day.
Bingo.
And
Bingo.
I think that everybody at this point knows that musicians are getting fleeced on
It's impossible.
just about every single platform, and with Harmonic, that's not going to happen. And it also allows us to open the doors and create a conversation, which is absolutely missing on every single platform. The only platform that I think ever kind of dialed into that was Rdio. And I thought that was
I remember Rdio had the little sliders, right?
Yeah,
Where you could, Rdio was cool.
Great streaming platform. And I used it religiously.
You're going back a long time. That was like 2005 or something, right?
And when it was done, I was heartbroken, because Rdio allowed us to have two-way conversations with users that were streaming X, Y, and Z. It allowed us to have that, like, oh, this person, and you would look at their play and you're like, oh, I want to talk to them to find out more about, what's happening with Sweet Trip, or is My Bloody Valentine doing something that I haven't found out about yet, or what's Jeff Parker from Tortoise doing, or McCombs, Sam Precott, like, what are all these guys doing these days that I'm not aware of? And that allowed that to happen. And when that was gone, I was like, oh God, so where do I go to now?
But it's an interesting thing, and I'd love to fill that void personally. Dan may disagree, right? But like it's because I don't think there is a place. And in that line, like, what are they doing now? Is a question we shouldn't have to ask. Like, if like I should be on John McIntyre's radar, right? Like, I'm such a fan, and there should be a very easy little RSS feed from his brain to mine. Like, I just did this thing, because I'll buy anything, right?
Yeah.
But he has no idea. And that's what I mean. And then there's like a whole growing contingency of people that maybe are at a different place. I don't know if I want to go down this road. I think there needs to be a place, irrespective of where you are in your career, in your relationship to it, where your creative impulses can have a place to be talked about. And it shouldn't require, if it's not where you're at in your life, it shouldn't require the vagaries that it does when you are 19 years old and you're like, I'm gonna, this is it. It should be like, we should be able to create and hear that. And I'm convinced that Harmonic will be the place where someone discovers the next Smiths, but I think it'll also be the place where people can experiment and put things out. And you and I both know, because we both run record labels, it's sometimes those weird experiments that you don't think are going to go anywhere that captures people's ears. Speaking of the Smiths, like, How Soon Is Now was a B-side.
Yeah. If you could look behind me up here, I actually have it up on my wall. I'm still that teenage, boy that has his rock and roll posters.
Me too.
My stairway is the posters I had from when I was a kid.
Yeah. My
design.
daughter, she's at university now, but she actually has the giant British subway posters that are enormous. Like, she has mine on her walls in her bedroom of like a certain ratio, all these like Factory Records bands, a certain ratio, Joy Division. She's got a giant Morrissey poster. She has my original OG Smiths Rough Trade promo posters from the 80s on her walls.
Man, I've got a framed Queen is Dead over my, so like this, like, Harmonic, like, how do we do this, Dan and Chris? Like, how do we make Harmonic this hub where people like us can talk about, like, I want to be telling more people about Society of Rockets. I want, you know what I mean? Like, that's the whole reason we started this.
Can I jump in?
Please.
So as I was talking about our bundle release earlier, well, with the mechanisms that are currently exist on Harmonic, and with what Dan and you, George, have offered us, we were able to upload our posters in full resolution. So instead
Cool.
of having to go to a record store now, which they're not, I mean, they're not going to have our posters. I mean, record stores rarely have posters now, honestly. But
I know.
now, if somebody is a super fan, and we have tapped into that market or that group of listeners on Harmonic, and they come and find us on there, and they're like, "Oh, cool. So I can purchase the album, and then I can get all the assets along with the record, concert flyers, release flyers, the album artwork, and now I can go to my local, print shop, and, because I have, the original vinyl master uncompressed, I have that on my hard drive now directly from the mastering engineer's ears. Well, I can go and download the album cover. I can go to a print shop and download a really, really killer high resolution copy on a really, really nice cardstock or whatever kind of paper I want to use, giclée,
Hmm.
whatever is your thing, and I can frame it and have it on my wall. I mean, nobody else is offering.
That's an interesting. I mean,
Thank you.
that's kind of a decentralized print on demand. It's like, here's the file.
Yeah,
Pay a
No,
small amount because it costs you nothing, right?
yeah,
To sell the file to people, and people can go to their local print shop and
and it
the
becomes that social object, right, that we've lost. You talk about Joy Division, the number of kids I see wearing the Unknown
I
Pleasures
know.
little, and I hope that they have actually listened to the record and don't just sort of like the t-shirt, but one way or the other, like it that's what people go, just like you said, you met your best friend being like, "Oh, what's that?" or "I love them too," and
Yeah,
and we sort of lost that, and it's like losing a part of, it's like losing the ability to articulate who you are,
right.
and, yeah, we're trying to bring that back a little bit,
Yeah, lots of
but,
static in the world.
yeah, we want some more signal, less noise,
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I can't thank you enough for this. We
Oh,
should
thank
do
you.
another one where we just talk about the records that we love, but, you're
Yeah,
so
I'll
great. I'm so glad we got to meet. Yeah.
more conversation about music generally is kind of the path to bringing more people into the conversation,
yeah,
right? It's
Yeah. Thank
yeah.
you for spreading the word and taking the time and just being such a great source of inspiration,
Geez, thank
Chris.
you for allowing us into this universe and,
We're trying. We're
giving us,
trying,
a
man.
chance to,
Yeah.
find other ways to expose people to
We're
what we're
trying.
doing.
Yeah. I think we're gonna do it. It always takes longer than you want, but we're
No.
trying to do it the right way.
Yeah.
I go back to just, I think it's really important for the artist to know who their really passionate fans are. And even if those fans take their percentage that they get from writing about some band they love and then reinvest that into buying more music, great. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just be part of the community that's supporting art and supporting artists. Lord knows we need more people to do it. We're just trying to create mechanisms that seem right.
Sure, sure, absolutely, and a big part of that is also educating the listeners. And you know I can't tell you how many times people will say to me, well, oh, you work in the music industry, that's going to be so much fun, and it's it looks like just a total blast. And then it's like, well, yeah, no, it is a lot of fun, but it's also a lot of hard work, and there's a lot of heartache in it too. And for the musicians, the amount of time and sweat equity and capital that they put into it to just for Spotify, like, oh yeah, you got 1,000 plays, here's $3.50. Thank you. And here's some bullshit ad about blah, blah, blah. And it's like, come on. I mean,
We
every
have a choice how we relate to technology.
sure.
We can either become a tool of it, which is what Spotify does to artists,
Yeah,
or we can use technology to help ourselves emerge as to
exactly.
who we want to be. Harmonic's about emerging,
Right.
right? And that can be emerging as an artist, emerging as a critic, emerging as a conversation starter, but it's using the technological tools that we have in service of the art, not the other way around.
Yeah,
For far too long, artists have built all this value for these platforms and been left behind.
right.
That's not our values, and I think we've got, and someone like you too, a demonstrable track record of not doing that shit,
Yeah, yeah.
you know?
Well, and it
And I
also
ain't
feels
gonna
like
change that now.
it's about immersion and being like
Being immersive. Yeah,
fully
yeah, exactly. I
into
love
it,
that.
as
Yeah,
a listener and as an artist, and being able to share all the
I love that.
moments that go into it. So keep on doing
Emerge and immerse.
it.
Yeah.
Right?
Merge and immerse. I love it.
Totally. That's a
Thanks,
t-shirt.
Chris.
Thank
Yeah.
you so much.
Yeah.
Harmonic, emerge and immerse. I do.
Right, right.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you. Thank me. Thank you so much. I really, and the Rockets
A
and
joy.
Daniel.
Yeah,
And, you know, he's
yeah.
out there somewhere in the ether with all that good musical
And
energy.
thanks for keeping him
appreciate it.
out there. You know.
Yeah, man.
All
Work
right.
on it.
We'll talk soon. Thanks.
Thank you. Be well.
Thank
Bye.
you so much, guys.
Bye.
Cheers.
Take care, Chris.